technology firm EOH posted a 35% increase in full-year headline earnings per share to 197 cents. Earlier, I caught up with John King, Chief Financial Officer at EOH.
We've had a really good year, and what's particularly pleasing is that we've seen most of the growth coming from organic growth, but 60% of our growth is organic, and about 40% as a result of acquisitions. And we've also seen that we've increased our services revenue substantially by more than 66%. And that's really in line with our strategic intent to move more into services. But across the board, the software plus the infrastructure businesses have also grown about 20% each. So we're now in a situation where our services business represents about 60% of our business, software about 20%, and infrastructure about 20%.
Yeah, very impressive numbers, particularly given the environment that we are in. I mean, every day we talk about the potential that the global economy could be slipping into a double-dip recession. Here in South Africa, we've seen growth trends slowing down, and also economies coming across and revising their growth numbers. So where are you finding this growth?
What we're seeing is we're seeing that the IT industry itself, it's probably a 75 billion rand industry. And we see that a lot of companies are now outsourcing a lot of the IT services.
Right.
So you're having a shift from companies doing their own IT to IT service providers. And we're picking up a lot of that. So the managed services space, both in the application managed services, the technical application managed services space, we're doing a lot of work there, as well as cloud computing. There's a lot of cloud computing happening at the moment. We're ready for it. We already have a number of clients doing cloud computing.
Yeah.
And the other area is the business process outsourcing. So we're seeing a shift from companies doing it themselves to IT service providers is probably the main reason. Let's
talk cloud computing because probably it's the sexiest of all. I mean, everybody talks and they talk about cloud computing, etc. How much is there in terms of potential?
Oh, huge potential. What cloud computing enables one to do is not have to spend all the money up front in terms of infrastructure and applications.
Right.
So you're able to come to a company like EOH that has the infrastructure, has the applications, has all the security that's required. And companies are then able to very quickly, almost on demand, have IT. So the potential is huge. I think a few years ago one thought it might take a lot longer, but it's really taking off in South Africa. We already have our own private cloud, which we make available to our clients. We have clients on that. We're very well placed. It's going to be a big industry.
Now, this is in South Africa, so we can't even talk about the African continent now.
Yeah, I think from an African point of view, we've seen obviously increase in bandwidth, across the African continent. It's one of our objectives to go more into Africa.
Yeah, the lack of bandwidth constrains growth in cloud computing, does it?
It used to, but
not anymore.
Not anymore. The bandwidth is now fine. So that used to would have been a constraint, but it's no longer a constraint.
Okay.
So we now have a situation where we're able to go into Africa, do a lot of offshoring, a lot of remote support from South Africa into countries in Africa.
Now, 44% growth in revenue, as we talked about earlier. How much more remains there?
Oh, no.
Are you able to repeat these numbers?
Oh, yes. If you look at our numbers, we're sitting at about 2.4 billion rands worth of revenue.
Yeah.
The sector is probably about 75 billion. So we're not even close to double digit yet in terms of our market share. So we see no reason why we're going to slow down. We've done this repeatedly for the last 13 years.
Yeah. And
we have no intention of slowing down. The market's there.
Where is that growth going to come from? Is that South Africa? Is it Africa? Is it a combined unit?
It's mainly going to be South Africa. There's a lot of growth opportunities in South Africa. What we're going to be doing is spending a lot more time in the public sector.
Right.
Recently, a company called TSS Managed Services joined the EOH family, has about 600 people, focusing mainly in the public sector in the managed services space. And we're doing a lot of work in the public sector now. So we're seeing a shift to doing more work in the public sector. So we'll see growth there. So managed services, some of the BPO stuff in health, some of the other services. So there's a lot of opportunity for growth.
Let's talk about Africa. Yeah. How much opportunity is there and where?
Well, I think if you look at, we're going to focus primarily on the sub-Saharan African area where there is sufficient infrastructure in those countries and where there's bandwidth connectivity to those countries.
Right.
And all the services that we're able to offer in terms of the managed services, we're able to offer to any African country. You don't have to have a presence, although we may have a point of presence in those countries.
Right.
You haven't got to have an office or a substantial office anymore.
Okay.
You've got the bandwidth, you've got the people in South Africa, and we're promoting the whole offshoring concept in Africa.
When people talk, they talk about Nigeria, they talk about Kenya, they talk about Angola, some of the fastest growing economies. Add that to that heap, Ghana. In terms of geographies,
All of
Where
them.
are these?
All of those.
All of the above.
All of the above. So anything sub-Saharan African we're looking at.
Yeah.
That's really what we're going to be looking at.
And how will that growth be funded? Are we looking organic here? Are we looking acquisitive? How will this be done?
No, it'll essentially be mainly organic because, as I said, most of it's remote support that we're going to be providing.
Right.
We have the support infrastructure in South Africa. We have the people in South Africa.
Sure.
We need to obviously create some partnerships in those countries, but we're not going to have substantial offices, put in huge infrastructures in those countries at all. But one of the other things we're doing from a South African perspective is what we call our job creation initiative. And there's more than 8 million people that are unemployed in South Africa.
Agreed.
And at the moment, government's been shouldering most of that responsibility. And we believe it's up to business now to take on more responsibility. So we've got a team. We've got a team together. We're approaching all our top 300 customers, all our business partners, to devise ways and means and mechanisms to develop people, to skill people, to make sure that we can address this challenge. So we're working with government, and it's something which we believe we have a responsibility as a company, and business generally has a responsibility to make sure that we address this unemployment problem in South Africa.
Certainly that will be music to government ears, but others would point out that you also have a trading environment which is characterized by uncertainty, particularly in terms of policy decisions that we've seen coming through. I mean, we can talk about a whole lot of things, but we can add into that debate the whole nationalization debate, the uncertainty within the ruling party, etc., etc. And some would argue that hinders the ability to plan for the long term.
I don't think
You're not in that camp.
Well, I think the IT industry, by its very nature, we look more short-term than long-term in any event, and we're very adaptable and flexible in what we do. So we're able to address those particular areas quite easily. Government departments, businesses all need IT. IT is no longer just something that's there that you have in the back office. It really does enable businesses to do business really well. So no matter who owns the business, whether it's private or government, in terms of nationalization, the requirements for IT will always be there.